Hi, I'm Dr. Gwen, and my channel is all about creating content that empowers the neurodiverse and disabled community. In this episode, Dr. Deborah Winking comes back onto the show to share 3 more valuable tips for parents who want to raise capable and self-determined neurodiverse children. Welcome back to the show. I am so excited to welcome back Deborah Winking, author, teacher, and we established this in the last episodes. Most importantly, parent. Hi, Deborah. How are you?
Very good. It's so great to be back with you, Gwen. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming back. And our first 2 episodes together, we were talking about the habits, really, of capable or raising capable kids, habits that parents can get under their belt to raise capable kiddos. And so you're back to go over the last 3 habits. And I know that this is not the end because whenever you and I talk, you're like, I've got another one. I've got another one. I've got another one. So I will put links in the description below and cards somewhere up here on our first 2 episodes together, which cover the first 3 and then 4 through 6. And then today we're going to go through 7 through 9, 3 more habits that parents can get under their belt. So, Deb, if you want to take over, please do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to be back together. I feel like this is becoming a saga, right? And that is how the habits work, is they all work together. So we do encourage you to listen to the previous pods because these are not standalones, but we're going to jump right into it. In habit 6, the last one you may have heard in our second pod, we talked about using words and acting in ways that send your child the message that you think they're capable. And, habit 7 is kind of the corollary to that. And that is setting the expectation that that others treat your child as capable. Setting the expectation that others treat your child as capable. We are the most influential people in our kids' lives, but it's just as important that those people who our child encounters every day treat them as capable too, because we talk about the impact of how you are treated has on how you see yourself. So to get into this, I would say for our purposes today, I'd like to talk about 3 categories of folks that our kids and young adults run into every day. Now, I'm going to encourage you, and actually I'm going to ask you to put in the show notes because the author's name is escaping me now, but there's another author that I love and I put in the book that is talks about the spheres of people our children encounter. I'm not going to go from those, but I would encourage our readers to look at them, and I'll put it in we should put it in the show notes. But for our work today, I would say these are the 3 kind of buckets of people. They're the strangers, people that our kids run into at Target or the store. They're the regular interactors, people that our kids see every day, lunch personnel, the bus driver, parents, their friends' parents, folks that they see regularly. And then finally, the practitioners. Those are those experts who work with therapists, OTs, PTs, teachers' aides, etc. So let's take each group as it comes. If it's important, and we know it is, to set the expectations that others treat your child as capable, how do we do that? For strangers, let's face it, we can't always control that. For example, you're at the store and your child takes a little longer, or your young adult takes a little longer to reach up, process what they're doing, and grab the item they want. And some well-meaner that just happens to be in the store sees what he thinks is struggle and grabs it for him right away. I mean, that happens, right? We really can't control that. And in fact, guess what? The less we're with our child, and as our child grows and becomes the capable adult we want them to be, we're going to have less control over that because we will be with them. There'll be fewer and fewer environments that will be with them. So in that case, there's really not time to model the expectation that, you want him treated as capable. But oftentimes I work with lots of parents that just do a simple, hey, don't worry, he's got that. Or if your child is self-advocating, which we want them to do as well, they'd say, no, I got this. In terms of regular interactors, these are like we said, the parents, the bus drivers, the lunch folk. I've worked a lot of times with people who overhelp, and we don't realize what overhelping does to our kids. And so I guess here I want to say, here's a great example. When my kid was growing up, if I let him struggle getting the straw into his juice box because I knew he could do it, and he does it all the time, but it felt uncomfortable to his friend's parent, they're jumping in and trying to help. And I think that's an opportunity for you to set the stage and say, hey, wait a minute. No, don't worry. He's got this. I think the other thing that you could do is use your own behavior to set the tone. For example, one of the things that I hold most as a badge of honor is a friend who told me many years later, she said, I always knew there was stuff going on with Jack, but you treated him as if he could, and I took my lead from you, and I took my cues from you. So when he'd come over to spend the night, even though he had motor difficulties, I'd say, oh, buddy, I know you got your bag. And so I was setting the tone that I wanted for my child. I also would say we need to shape people's ideas about how they treat kids who look different, move different, talk different, process differently. So I was really happy to hear from a person that in my time, the Stone Age, we would call a lunch lady, who was on one of my podcasts, and she said, I use when the students from the self-contained class or the supported classrooms came in, I used to run around the side of the counter and get right in front of them, put on their milk, load up their trays for them. But after reading Capable, I changed how I interacted with those students. I hung back. I looked at what they were doing, saw what they were doing. Were they starting to reach? And I didn't reach out and give it to them. I didn't carry their tray to their seat. And for her, she realized that what she thought was helpful, in fact, was not helpful at all and possibly harmful in terms of the goals for that child. So those are those kind of two groups of folks that you want to influence in positive ways when you're with your child by setting the tone. You're not always going to be with your child. That's when we get into having our kids use their own voice and say, hey, I got this, or I can do this, because ultimately it's going to be them, not us. But I would say that third group, the practitioners, are an interesting one. These are skilled, dedicated professionals. I believe that each and every person that worked with my son, and then as I'm working with people, I know kind of what my meaning and intention is. But those folks get tripped up too, and I want to remind our parents that kind of the math to all this. Even the most skilled professionals are with our child, and I'm talking elementary here, 5.5 hours a day. We have them 16.5 hours a day. So it's really important to know that let them know that you know your child well. Now, these professionals know your child's zone of proximal development, what we term that kind of area where where they can see the most where they believe they'll see the most progress. But because they don't see your child all the time, they don't know what he can do at home. They don't know the things he might be doing in other environments. And I would say about my child, when I would go in to the OT or PT, hey, it's okay to challenge him today. It's all right. It's all right, to let him struggle a little bit, because I know he's doing some of this stuff at home. Because our professionals have such a short time with our sons and daughters, maybe 20, 30, 40-minute sessions. You want those sessions to be as productive as possible. And, here's an example. I was working in Wisconsin last week with some parents, and we talked about this parent's daughter, Haley. And she was watching in the classroom, and she noticed that over time, the teacher's aide, was reading the questions to Haley. And Haley could read, but Haley was a slower processor. And she also began kind of suggesting answers for tests. Haley's a junior in high school. She would say, like, on one particular writing prompt, this parent pointed out, the writing prompt was, write about your favorite game. And the aide jumped in and say, oh, saw Haley waiting because she was taking some time to process. And the aide jumped in and said, oh, Haley, you like Uno. We always play Uno. Write about Uno. Later, when that mom talked to Haley, Haley said, there's so many games I like. I was just trying to decide which one. And so I think that's really important, to set the stage with the folks that work with your child. Hey, I'm okay letting him struggle a little. Or remember, it takes this long, because all those great practitioners and professionals, even they sometimes are on time schedules, and they could jump in, supply, take over for your child when you don't want that to happen. So that's just something to really be aware of. I have another story of a friend who's a friend and client at one point whose son is in adult services. And, she had his lunch every day, and he went to his adult services. It was 2 months before she found out that he was not going into the community because the assistants and teachers working with him let him finish his lunch. Now, Taylor's nonverbal. He wasn't going to tell him. He would take as long as he needed to finish his lunch. But his mom, who knew him best, intention was for him to get out in the community. And so, it's really important. And she had to set her intention. Hey, look, in 20 minutes, when everybody else is finished with their lunch, you wrap it up and Taylor goes out with the group. Because in her absence, she learned that important to others were not treating her child as capable. So I think those things are important because they all lead to learned helplessness. And without getting too jargony, we want to remember that when we do too much, or too much is done for our kids, they start to feel like their actions don't matter one way or another. And that's when they start to opt out. And that's when they start to decide, hey, I'm going to pretend like I don't know. And that's when a whole lot of behaviors that we don't want any part of begin to surface, like checking out, even manipulating situations, because they know that folks know if they wait long enough, the helpers, the well-meaners, and the do-gooders will jump in. So that's why I think habit 7 is so important, that you set the expectation about how others will treat your child, both through the example you set and, as necessary, by letting folks know explicitly, this is what he's doing at home and this is what he can do. So I'll stop there and see if you kind of want to weigh in on this one at all. It seems obvious, but so often we think the experts know better. And so we kind of shh, when maybe we need to inform them.
Yeah, I mean, I love this, Deb, because I love the idea, and I think just in my experience, actions do speak louder than words. Action sends message. They send messages. And so when we overhelp, um, what happens are messages not only of, hey, I don't believe that you can do this, or I don't believe that you can do this in the way that I want you to do this, or in the way that it needs to be done. And that's always interesting to me. And so over time, what I see, especially in adults, is resentment. I see resentment build on top of just learned helplessness, but we need to give individuals the dignity of risk, to take
Mhm.
risks, to do things on their own so that they can learn from their experiences. And then, parents are usually pleasantly surprised. There's something I think very psychological that happens in this very um, synergistic way, which is, oh, wow, you can do that. Oh, and then parents
Right.
naturally can let go in the ways that let going, if that's a verb, needs to happen. I think the challenge here is, how do you balance challenge or demand with overwhelm, right? Because we all know that threshold can be quite difficult sometimes, especially
Right.
when,
Mhm.
regulation might be hard to hit or sustain, that some days, some hours might be better or worse than others. And
Sure.
so, it really does kind of take very
True.
attuned people, right, to kind of figure
True.
out, this is the time that challenge, or being on those kind of edges or outskirts of comfort, is necessary or could be productive, but this is a time where that's not, right?
Not.
How do
Mhm.
we figure, I think that's really a challenging piece. And I think very well-meaning professionals always feel like I have to do something to show that I'm working, when sometimes making the decision not to do something is actually the intervention. So those are really like just some of
Fair.
my thoughts, right off the
Fair.
top. But I love this idea that when that parents treat their kids as capable, and they help the environment follow suit, whatever that is. And with strangers, you can sometimes let those things go because it's a one-off and
Yeah, because it's not happening
whatever.
very often.
But man, those regular people, are the regular interactors and the practitioners. That's where we might want to lean in a little bit, because those are the repeated kinds of exposures. So I love that. I realized I didn't
Well,
even
I
put up
think
the
we're a good.
I
Oh,
didn't put up our slide, Deb.
okay. Get that up there. I
Yeah.
was going to say, Gwen, I feel like we're a great foil for each other, because I think you are so astute at pointing out, like you said, sometimes the intervention for that day may be no intervention, maybe not acting at all.
Mm-hmm.
I have run into, in my experience as a teacher and with my own child and with kids and parents I consult with, more of the other. That there's, I see more instances of understimulation than overstimulation. And I think
Interesting.
we're a great foil for each other, because certainly, I mean, I think it's it's sort of like the yin and the yang. We definitely don't want to ever get to the point where what we're doing is now no longer productive. We're hurting people. They're outside of where they can behave and act and respond. And on the other hand, we know that learning comes through, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of brain science in a second, but comes through what we call productive struggle. So actually, if you're okay with it, that takes us to the next
Yeah.
habit. Are we good on that?
Absolutely. Here we go. Let's do it.
I'm
I
yeah,
love
you
that.
setting it up.
Productive.
Okay.
What did you call that, Deb? Productive struggle?
Productive struggle, and we're going to talk about that. So I have, and again, remember that what we just kind of discussed, that yin and yang, this habit has to do with how we encourage skill building by adding a little challenge to the situation. Again, as Gwen points out so well, and I love your words on this, with the soft landings and the long runways, that support in ways that take him and you sometimes out of your comfort zone with that support. Because what we know, the fact is that every organism in this world, from a tree to amoeba to a human, changes and evolves because of discomfort. Some kind of discomfort is how we change. If I have everything laying around me, I don't need to get out of bed. And so we know that the kind of spiritualist and I think physicist, not Atul Gawande, but I'll think of his name. He talks about how we change because we run into those moments of discomfort. So I'm reminded of coming home when I would go out and I'd leave all my kids at home, and I think I've talked about this in a previous pod, and all of my three other kids would be running around like crazy playing some very creative game where they're having to use their brains and kind of really figure out what I would call ill-structured situations because everything's not laid out for them. And my son Jack would be propped up on pillows on all sides with the TV going. So, and his favorite toys around him. What I realized very quickly that that situation where, yes, he was safer and comfortable and more comfortable, but he was not learning. And so here's where we talk about that tightrope we walk to challenge, to provide structured discomfort. Frankly, that's what it is when we talk about productive struggle. So I'm going to give you the definition of productive struggle, just for the heck of it, for those of us who want to get into the kind of academics of it. Productive struggle is the process of effortful learning that occurs when we are faced with problems that we don't immediately know how to solve. So this comes up, and you're actually probably deeper into this than I am, so push on this. When we think about the brain is kind of like a field, and it's always trying to make these new connections. And it's like clearing a path and making the dirt road into a highway. And, at the first time you try something new, your brain, the signals travel really slow. But with repeated practice, guided by feedback, that process gets more and more efficient, and the dirt path, or where you were bushwhacking initially, becomes a superhighway. So I guess I want to say that, and again, not to get too much into the weeds, so to speak, though that myelin that's created with practice is kind of the brain's pavement, and it lays down when it repeatedly signals travel through those neurons, that myelin is laid down, and that's kind of it gets wrapped around the wires in a well-myelinated sheath. Guess what? Brain signals travel so much faster. So that's why when we first learn a skill, we're slow at it, and we've done it a number of times, we're better at it. And I guess I want to say that there's lots of ways that we can use a little bit of productive struggle to build that superhighway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think, we know like the concepts of growth, and that change is always preceded by discomfort, right? We know that. This is one of those things, and in my practice, I call this demand dosing, which is how much demand or challenge will you dose out in that moment. And that really has to do with, readiness of the learner. How ready are they to learn as they get older? And I mean, I think when they're young too, but the idea of, in my mind, it's like we want collaboration over control. So
for sure.
if I know that a certain situation might be challenging for one of my clients, my encouragement is always, if you're ever going to be on the edges or the outside of your range of comfort, consent needs to happen. So, especially as kids get older, and I'm primarily working with adolescents and adults.
Sure.
But that idea of like, hey, this is coming up. In my mind, as a very devoted and anxious mother, I'd really like you to build, to stretch your social skills muscle. Let's just say. Would you be willing to do a little bit of that at the Thanksgiving party or at this Christmas party? And if so, we build that plan, and then there's an agreement, and then we don't have to then deal with being kind of blindsided or overwhelmed. We can really prepare for the challenge. And I really feel like that's when the productive struggle, or the struggle, is productive, instead of the struggle being overwhelming and destructive, right? Like, how do we do that? But I love this idea that, Deb, have you ever read that book, The Blessings of a Skinned Knee?
No, but I'm writing it down right now.
There's a book called The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. And the idea of that is going back to that idea of the dignity of risk, right? How do you allow your kids to take that risk? And when you're in the moment, obviously we're talking about risks that are not life-threatening. Okay, so I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
But that idea of that our kids we all learn best through experience. And so allow your kids to have the experiences that teach them ultimately, and where they can, the other way I say this is, let your kids live their decisions. Because then they won't know how to make them. Right? If they don't make the decisions and then live the consequences and live them, they don't know how to make them later, right? So I love this.
Well, you know what? I wonder, I have these, so this would be fun. I think we have time. We only have one more habit left. So there's 4 strategies for how you could use productive struggle to enhance learning with your kid. I wonder if we could first, if you're okay with it, first tell a story and then see where we see each of these 4. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, do it. Yeah, do it, Doug.
So the 4, because the story is just a page long, but it's from the new book that's not come out yet. It's a real story of a real parent. But let's listen to the 4. The 4 are, the 1 is frequent practice with retrieval. And that's exactly what you said, which is having your kid practice things ahead of when they have to do them. Having them, so they might be practicing the situation before it's at the Thanksgiving table. That's 1. The second thing is trying things, including practice. This is productive struggle, including practice in different contexts, in different ways, and not doing things always the same way. So with that is, if we're practicing how we use certain social skills, if we're practicing putting that iPod down instead of staring at the screen, we're practicing it in a lot of different contexts. That creates more, believe it or not, that is a way to get those pathways stronger, is practice that is diverse. Thirdly is practice over time to deepen the learning. So short bursts, and this gets at your point about overload. Short bursts over time leads to, and science shows this, leads to better long-term learning than, let's say, having a kid in a situation for a longer period of time, but not so much over time. Finally, interestingly, the last one, believe it or not, that they found, the last way that you can increase learning is also through mindfulness. Listen to this. Research shows that regular mindfulness can increase the production of myelin, increasing connectivity within the brain. So, you can do mindfulness sessions using apps, and that also will deepen those pathways. So I think, learning is not about turning on a light, as you point out, with no supports, no preparation. It's about constructing faster and better roads in the brains. And so, you know what? Our brains become more efficient through repeated practice with specific feedback in different ways over time. That makes learning more difficult, aka productive struggle, but it's the difficulty that pays off in the long run. So, without commenting on those, shall I jump right into the story? And we can see where we find some of these instances with this mom and kid. So, Jalen has a love-hate relationship with sound. On the one hand, he loves music, everything from Billy Joel to Stevie Wonder to Fatboy Slim. He is so curious that when he finds a new song on his sister's car radio, he immediately records it so he can later find it on YouTube and add it to his own personal playlist. At the same time, Jalen hates certain sounds, so much so that he's taken to finding those sounds online, and he plays them for himself over and over again. So he's ready when he encounters those sounds in daily life. It's kind of his own clever kind of DIY desensitization therapy. And I'd say, his parents only wish that this extraordinary curiosity about all things musical extended to the world around him. Generalized low muscle tone makes walking taxing for Jalen, and a fixed slight bend at his knees makes standing for an extended period of time very uncomfortable. Because of these challenges and his own kind of penchant for predictability in his life, Jalen is perfectly content to spend his entire day in his room with his iPod, iPad, and iPhone. Sound familiar? His mom, Michelle, says that no, a firm no, is Jalen's first response to most everything he's asked to do. And when he was younger, now he's about, I think he's 13, when he was younger, crying and dropping to the floor characterized Jalen's trips to the grocery store, so much so that Michelle and her husband Dan stopped taking him at all. But theirs was a family on the move, and Michelle wanted Jalen to benefit from all the things that she thought were important in life: travel, exploring the outdoors, sharing experiences with his two sisters and his brother. So Michelle was concerned about all the life that Jalen was missing when he was immersed in his techno-driven musical world. Also, she couldn't imagine making family memories. I mean, that was selfish. She said she didn't want to make memories without her youngest son. So the goal became getting Jalen to tolerate family trips to amusement parks. Knowing that the walking itself would be daunting, Michelle started out by having Jalen walk with her to the house next door and back. Then she gradually increased it to 2, then 3, then 4 houses until Jalen had conquered the entire block. She got a membership at LA Fitness, and trips to the gym every week was another way that she increased Jalen's endurance. Then it came time to go to the amusement park. Once at the park, Jalen put out his strong preference to sit on the bench with his iPod. Michelle laid out the terms of engagement. Jalen, you get to choose one ride. Knowing full well he wanted to choose no rides. She thought that a single ride would be a good start. Knowing his mother's resolve, Jalen's protest gave way to him deciding on one ride. Outside Spaceship Earth at Disney, Michelle says Jalen threw himself on the ground in the ultimate refusal. But over time, one by one, park by park, Michelle increased the expectation that Jalen choose from one ride to 2 rides, then 3, and finally, Jalen was up to choosing 6 rides. So today, he takes on almost all the rides in the park, including the high roller, a classic wooden roller coaster at their local amusement park in Minneapolis. His sisters marvel that Jalen always calls the lead seat the scariest spot on the rides. And as they all get off laughing, including Jalen, they head out to take on their next adventure. So take that as an example. I guess we could look at that and see where there's examples of each of those 4 pieces of how to use elements of productive struggle to encourage skill building.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my mind goes to like, what's the value of what she's going for, right? And in my mind, it's like family connection, right? Family connection, family time. So it's like, whenever we apply productive struggle, you want to make sure that what you're struggling on is valuable, is meaningful. Because I think sometimes we lose that, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put all my productive struggle into this math worksheet. And I know maybe that's good for somebody, but
no, it's so important.
But I love the idea of just, I'm going to schedule gradual, repeated practice, 1 ride, 2 rides, 3 rides, even starting with walking to 1 house to 2, just to build endurance to be at a park, right? Like it's just very thoughtful. And I think raising children does take a lot of intention, especially if they're neurodivergent, that it takes even more intentionality, I think, to really do it in a way that your kid can digest what you're trying to do.
Well, I think what you just said too, Gwen, is so important. The intention and the goal was so meaningful, so important. What they were going for made sense. And you notice what was also part of her intentionality was different parks, different places, not the same place, the same ride. So she was increasing Jalen's ability to handle the parks writ large by changing the kind of repeated practice that he had over time and extending the time he was practicing, but in a very intentional way. So I think you're absolutely right. And the point you made about the math workshop or the math worksheet, I want to offer a anecdote about that too. I was working with this other mom and her child flapped a lot. And the other thing he did was he scrunched his face in very painful ways. And he scrunched his face because it was a way for him to process, a way for his attention reliever for him. And she took on the flapping and the face pushing. And she realized, wait, pick my battles. I'm going for the wrong thing. I don't need to take him out of his comfort zone on that one. That's just important to me. So let's take those 2. My kid flaps sometimes. So what? My kid gets to have meaningful experiences with his brothers and sisters and now is snapping pictures of him on rides at the amusement park with his 2 sisters. I guess we can see where the scales would tip in terms of which one's important to apply that intentionality, to apply that plan for productive struggle over time to get there. And so I guess that's what we're really talking about is with habit number 8, challenge with support for those things that really matter.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let those go.
Yeah.
The payoff is too good over time.
Yeah. And we don't have much, it's like, what are you going to spend the attentional or the cognitive currency on? You don't have you don't have an unlimited budget. So, I say to my clients a lot, choose the hill you're going to die on. Like, what is the one hill? If it's just one, like what would that be, And, I in stimming, I mean, and this is a whole nother, I mean, I've talked about this in other episodes, but, but stimming is a regulatory behavior. It's not something we want to remove if it's not, especially if it's not disruptive to the environment. Or, it's like, so anyway, that's a whole nother, we can also a whole nother one.
That's another episode.
It's another episode. I'm going to put up this next habit here. Sure. There we go, Deb. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yes. And you know what? Habit 9, real clear. Walk alongside professionals to get your child the supports and services they need. This is really important, and it's so hard to do. We don't have time to discuss, much of this at all. We only have time to dip our toe in. So, I'll be excited for folks to read Raising Capable Kids so they can go deep, because there are three big areas I tackle here. And one is therapies, one is school, and third is accommodations and modifications. And it'll take more time than we have today, but let's just dip our toe in. So remember, again, we know our child more than anyone. Reminding you again of that math problem. 5.5 hours to 16.5. We're with even the best dedicated teacher with transitions has your child no more than about 5 hours a day. So one of the things that I do when I work with parents is talk about communicating clearly what your child needs and showing them then that you're willing to collaborate to get to the desired solution. That is better than threatening lawsuits, not wanting to work together, because in 9 out of 10 times, if you're willing to collaborate, you're going to get to the solution that you want. And I've seen this in many schools, and I've worked in more school districts than we can list on this podcast. So the idea here's just a quick example. I worked with parents that during the pandemic clearly communicated that their child needed a consistent aid to recover lost learning. And the school district was at a loss, because I know we all remember the pandemic. It's not that far in the rearview mirror. We couldn't get teaching assistants. And this parent particularly jumped in saying, look, we have people that we've worked with on care.com. And she pointed the school district to professionals and folks that she'd worked with on the website care.com and said, hey, try these folks. See if they would like to be part-time aides for the school district, and actually got to a solution for her child by working collaboratively with the school district instead of saying, that's your problem. I just want that aid and I want them tomorrow. So, I think that's really important to remember. With therapies, let me say, consider them all, but be a critical consumer of the therapies that are offered to your child and the extra supports and the extra programs that are offered to your child, given your vision of capable that you've constructed with your child. I have an example here that I'd like to offer, and that is, sometimes our kids are offered services and supports as part of a package because they have a certain diagnosis or label. And so my kid was getting this great service of letters and numbers in the hallway, which I found out by being in the school for another purpose. And I saw him outside at a desk with a teacher's aide sitting alone working on letters and numbers. And I looked at my own vision of capable that I had constructed with what I saw as a young boy of second grade, what I saw and believed for my child. And it really included him being in the class with his peers as much as possible. And so I had to say, I think it's cool. And some people thought it was crazy. He had a twin sister who was having trouble with reading. I said, hey, can she have a dose of that letters and numbers in the hallway? Oh, no, only Jack can get it because Jack has the label. So ironically, the kid that could really use it wasn't getting it, and the kid that could use it that couldn't use it was stuck outside at the desk. And so I had to take a pass on that and say, you know what? Thank you so much for letters and numbers in the hallway, but we'll take a pass on that because whatever he's missing in the classroom, we think is more important. So that's just a reminder that consider everything you're offered, but measure it up against your co-constructed vision of capable for your child. So last thing, because I know we're ending now, is about accommodations and modifications. And again, we get more into this in the book, but remember that every accommodation that you allow in your child's plan, make sure that there's an intentional plan for phase out of that accommodation over time. Because otherwise, those accommodations can become a life sentence. In other words, we learn that we're only going to do a third of the page because that's all we ever have to do. And then someday, when we're asked to do more, we can't because there was no intentional plan for phasing out that accommodation. So those are just some of the beginning broad strokes of walking alongside professionals. Much more in the book and much more practical tips, but I know that's all we have time for today.
I love it, Deb. The idea of, if you can collaborate with professionals and team members, that's better than being adversarial, especially as we think about IEPs and that you might be with the same group of people for a decade. I mean, like, how do you build those kind of working relationships? I mean, if you can, obviously, I know that there are some situations where for whatever factors and reasons that's not possible. But that is better to work alongside people. And I do think that, people that are in our field, in special education, right? Especially if we're talking about the school setting, really good intentions.
Absolutely.
Right? And so it's really about like, how do we envision the action plan or how we're executing this plan? And that parents, and what I love about Capable is that you help parents develop their framework of how to think about their kid as capable. Because inevitably, I do think parents need and benefit from direction for how to think about their kids as capable, because then that trickles down into how they're advocating or collaborating, with people. So I think that's so great. And I love your point about the fade. When I talk about it, I talk about how if you've added an accommodation or a prompt, what is your plan to turn that or shift that responsibility back to the student? And I don't see that being done. And so I see students being one-on-one supported all through high school, and then they graduate and they basically fall off a cliff because we haven't thought about that. So I love those points. And I do, I do encourage people to pick up the book. I will put the link for Capable in the show notes. But I do encourage people to pick it up. It's fantastic. It's so practical. It's a very practical book.
Now, Gwen, just to let you know, Capable's out there. Raising Capable Kids won't be released until spring, but we'll let folks know when that comes out. And just to let you know, do you want to still talk another time about the final 3 habits?
Yeah, we should. And let's bring you back for part 4, Deb, if you're okay with that.
That's it. Then we're done.
When Raising Capable Kids comes out in the spring, you got to come back and talk about it. Obviously, we got to spread the word about this because it's a mindset that I think is a really beneficial mindset to have, not only for parents but for anyone that's in the community and supports the neurodiverse community in any way, shape, or form. I think it's a really great framework and reminder of, how do we think about neurodiversity? How do we do that? So I love it, Deb. Thank you. I'm going to kind of bring us back here, but thank you so much for your generosity of time and talent. I always love talking to you. I learn so much from you. So I appreciate you greatly. And I know our audience does as well.
All right. Well, I can't wait to talk again. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Deb.